Alrighty, students. Today is Monday, May 4th. Losing track of the days. But anyway, for those of you who haven't turned in your paper, make sure you turn that in and make sure all your work is caught up. We are getting very close to the end of the year, and you have till May 29th to get all your work turned in, and I'm going to give you a couple more assignments, but we're almost done, and I'm not going to teach any day past May 22nd. So we have about 3 weeks left, and I want to cover a little bit of drugs and alcohol. We're going to finish a little bit of sex ed. It's going to be a little bit different than how I normally teach it in the classroom because there's just some stuff that I can't explain through the internet. So, first things first. Today we're going to be talking about dating because dating is part of a relationship, and being in relationships relates to sex ed a little bit. But we're going to talk about healthy versus unhealthy relationships a little bit today. So, first things first. Let's talk about how does dating come to happen. Well, it could start off that you guys are in a group, you see somebody you like, eventually you may text that person, eventually you go out as a couple, and then maybe you have a couple dates with that person. Now, just because you are dating a person does not mean you are in love or anything like that. Sometimes you just want to learn more about the person, and that's completely fine. If you date somebody for like a week or 2 weeks, and then you find out that that person picks their nose in public, are you going to want to continue dating that person? Maybe you enjoy picking your nose in public. Who knows? But you're never going to find out those kinds of things about people if you don't go on dates with them. So just because 2 people go on a date does not mean they're dating consistently. If you go on a date and it just goes terrible, it's okay to say, hey, I don't think this is going to work. So dating isn't just like, oh, we're boyfriend and girlfriend. It's taking somebody out, seeing if you enjoy each other's company, if they do something that you don't like, if maybe they're maybe there's red flags, and we'll get to what red flags are in a couple minutes here. If you get into those situations, obviously it's okay not to continue dating or not to go on a second date. It happens. People just don't mesh. You guys don't have the same values. You guys don't get along. And you're not going to find that out unless maybe you go on a date with this person, okay? So that's one thing. Just realize that when you date, it's not automatically boyfriend and girlfriend that you can find out about a person, okay? With dating, it's very important that you're yourself. If you try to act like somebody else, you're never going to be comfortable in your own skin, and then you're going to give this person a false perception of you. You want them to know you for who you are, so it's really important to be yourself. Yes, you're going to be a little bit timid on the first date. You're going to try to hold things back, and that's okay. But try to be yourself as much as possible, okay? You don't want to fake being somebody else, and then after you dated a couple times, show this person who you really are, and then they're like, what the heck is this? Because that'll make you feel demeaning. You've been hiding who you are, and it has effects on your mental health and stuff like that. It's important to communicate honestly with dating. If you're going to lie in a relationship, that is a big red flag. Or if you lie on a date and say you'll be there and you're not there, that's a big red flag. So when we talk about relationships, honesty is really important, because if you start lying, that's a red flag, and that sets up for a toxic relationship. Things that we all need to learn to handle better are rejection. Your parents have told you no multiple times, okay? You should be used to the word no. Just because you ask somebody on a date does not mean that you will go on a date with that person. They can say no, and it's very important that you get used to rejection. Not because people will always reject you every day, as in Mr. Durando's left, kidding, but because people are going to say no. Some people don't want to date. Some people are just not ready to date. Some people's parents are like, you're not dating till you're 35, okay? These are all things that happen. Just because you ask somebody on a date does not mean they're going to say yes. And if you ask somebody in public and they say no, that's going to make you feel really bad. I would recommend that if any of you young men or women are going to ask somebody on a date, you do it in private. This way, if they say no, not everybody's going to be around and you're not going to feel embarrassed. Also, if you're going to tell somebody no, do it respectfully. Say, look, I don't want to date right now. I'm not interested in dating. Things like that. And then don't go and tell 50 different people and embarrass the person anymore. Just say no and move on, okay? And don't start rumors because we all feel embarrassed and somebody's like, well, that's not what happened and this is how rumors start. It's okay for somebody to tell you no, and it's okay to tell somebody no, but we have to be respectful of each other. If you say no to a person, don't make fun of them and go to tell 20 of your friends about how terrible they were. And if you get told no, let's not start a bunch of rumors about a person. It's not respectful. So, learning to be told no and learning to accept no is part of dating. It's going to happen. Okay? Other things with this. Let's talk about when in a relationship. So, you take somebody out, you go on a couple dates, and you just want to have you want to get to know the person a little bit better. There are red flags that tell you, hey, we shouldn't be dating this person anymore. And sometimes we ignore those things, and it's really important that you don't. These are things that get people caught in abusive relationships later in life. And if you develop unhealthy dating standards as a kid, you're more likely to have these dating standards as an adult. And we're going to talk about this. So dating violence, that's when somebody has they're either emotionally abusive, physically abusive, or sexually abusive to that other person. So it can be any type of things that may abuse the other person. When we talk about physical abuse, that's physically hitting another person, grabbing them, throwing them around, things like that. The type of terrible things that you see in movies when they depict dating violence, they depict people beating on each other, horrible things. That's physical abuse. When we talk about emotional abuse, we're talking about somebody that's manipulating the other person. So they're like, you never do anything right, or you're terrible, only I could ever love you. When people say those type of things, what they're doing is they're tearing down that person's self-confidence, and that makes the person think that the only person who will love them is the person who's abusing them. And they get stuck in this abusive relationship cycle. So it's really important that physical abuse is bad, but mental abuse will eventually lead into physical abuse because they are manipulating you to stay with them by destroying your self-confidence. And any type of insulting and terrible thing that's being said, and if it's being said to hurt you, is something that is a red flag and you should not be in a relationship. Now, there are definitely couples that play fight with each other and they joke with each other. If both people are comfortable with it, that's one thing. But if you ever feel uncomfortable and you say that to another person and they're like, you're being too sensitive, that's a red flag, okay? So, if you say that to a person and they're like, you're being insensitive, you just don't get it. You should probably get out of the relationship because they don't respect your feelings. If they're not going to change their feelings for you, they're not going to change in the future for you either. So if that ever happens in a dating relationship, that's a big red flag. You should back out of the relationship, okay? Sexual abuse is when another person sexually takes advantage of another person, whether rape and stuff like that. I don't want to get too far into that, but if you have any questions, as always, email me. Let's talk about some other things. So, when we talk about abusive relationships and stuff that we hope never happens to us, but it's very, very prevalent. When Mr. Durando was in college, there used to be a women's violence shelter right next to the college. There were about 20, 30 people, women in that shelter who were abused by their partners. And if you remember at the beginning of the year, Mr. Durando showed you that funny picture where he's in high heels, where he walked a mile in heels. That was to raise awareness for dating violence. And when he was there was a speaker. Now, this young woman was abused by her partner. And she said, this is kind of paraphrasing what she said, this is how it happened. The partner or the male would be extremely explosive, get angry, physically and emotionally abuse her. And then after he did that, he would apologize, say he's sorry, he's going to change. and then as that happens, the tension kind of builds up again, and he explodes again. Now, this is not conducive, or I'm sorry, this is not exclusive to just males against women. Women can also be dating violence to males. It's just more prevalent among men to women, so I'm using that example. So when that happens, this tension keeps building up, he explodes again. It's a cycle, it keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. And in the woman's mind, she said that she always thought he was going to change, even after he had put her in the hospital 4 different times. She's telling us this story, and you're like, why can't you just leave? Well, she goes back, and when she was saying when she was a kid, it was she kind of developed these unhealthy relationships, and she developed these unrealistic standards that I can change people. And she thought she should change him for the better. She thought she could fix him. You have to understand that those are unrealistic expectations. And that opens up the cycle of abuse, which is why I'm telling you, if you notice somebody who's physically abusive, emotionally abusive, mentally, however, if they are taking advantage of your feelings or they're physically assaulting you, it's time to get out of the relationship. And if they do things that make you feel uncomfortable, you gotta leave the relationship. And as a kid, you know, people are gonna talk about breakups, and I know it's middle school and things hurt, and it's like, oh, I loved him, and yeah, okay. I get that it's really hard to break up with a person because you guys put a lot of stock in your social skills and being social with other people, and you want to impress other people, be like, I have a boyfriend, I have a girlfriend, stuff like that. But when we talk about being healthy and having healthy relationships, it's more important that you establish healthy dating standards, dating rules, and stuff like this. And we can go into more detail with that tomorrow. I just wanted you to introduce this topic because dating is going to be happening. Some of you may have already started dating in 7th and 8th grade, but when you get to high school, it's going to become a lot more popular. And since we're hitting the end of the year where some of you are getting older and probably going to high school and other kids are moving up into the 8th grade, I feel it's an important topic to talk about. There's so much I want to talk about here, but we're getting close to the 15-minute mark. If you have any questions, email me. No homework tonight. I will post the notes and everything on Google Classroom. Please get caught up on any missing work if you haven't already. That will be it. Thank you.